The Valari were a small people. They stood no taller than a human child, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to hold all the sadness of the universe. For 10,000 years, they had lived in peace. They had no army. They had no weapons. They had only their kindness and their gift for healing. The galaxy knew them well. When plagues struck distant worlds, Valari doctors came to help. When wars ended and soldiers lay dying, Valari healers worked through the night to save them. They asked for nothing in return. It was simply who they were. For protection, they relied on the Galactic Concord. This was a promise made by 12 powerful species. If anyone attacked the Valari, these 12 nations would come to defend them. It had worked for thousands of years. No one dared to touch the gentle healers, until now. Ambassador Yuna stood at the window of her office on Valari Prime. She was old by her people's standards, nearly 200 years. She had spent her whole life in service to peace. She had helped end wars. She had written treaties. She had believed, truly believed, that the galaxy was becoming a better place. Now she watched her world burn. The Marak Dominion had come 3 weeks ago. Their ships filled the sky like a dark cloud. The Marak were conquerors. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they did not need. They had decided they wanted Valari Prime. The first bombs fell on the southern continent. Yuna remembered the exact moment. She had been drinking tea with her assistant when the ground shook. They ran to the window and saw fire rising in the distance. Orange and red against the purple sky. That was 3 weeks ago. Now the southern continent was gone. Millions of her people were dead. The survivors huddled in underground shelters, waiting for the end. Yuna had sent messages to every member of the Galactic Concord on the first day. She had begged them for help. She had reminded them of their promise. One by one, they refused. The Arathi said they were sorry, but the Marak were too strong. War would cost too many lives. The Solviks said their fleet was needed elsewhere. They could not spare ships for such a distant conflict. The Kethni said the treaty had technical problems. They were not legally required to help. 12 species. 12 refusals. 12 betrayals. Yuna had read each message carefully. She had hoped to find some hidden promise of help. Some hint that someone was coming. But there was nothing. The galaxy had abandoned her people. Her assistant, a young male named Taro, entered the room. His blue skin was pale with fear. His hand shook as he handed her a report. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "the Marak General has made another broadcast." Yuna took the report. She did not need to read it. She already knew what it said. Surrender or die. The Marak General, a cruel creature called Drek, enjoyed making such demands. He enjoyed the fear in his victim's eyes. "How long do we have?" Yuna asked. "Hours, maybe less. Their ground forces are ready to land." Yuna closed her eyes. She thought of all the Valari who had trusted her. All the children hiding in shelters. All the elders praying to gods who seemed to have forgotten them. "There must be someone," she whispered. "Someone in this galaxy who will help." Taro shifted nervously. "There is one species we have not contacted." Yuna looked at him. "Who?" "The humans." The word hung in the air. Yuna knew about humans. Everyone in the galaxy knew about humans. They were a young species, barely 40 years in space. They were strange and unpredictable. They were strange and unpredictable. They laughed too loud and fought too hard. The elder races called them primitive, dangerous, emotional, but Yuna also remembered something else. 20 years ago, a Valari medical ship had stopped at a human station called Kepler. There had been an accident. Human workers were dying. The Valari doctors had stayed for 3 days, saving every life they could. The humans had wept with gratitude. They had offered payment, gifts, anything the Valari wanted. The doctors had refused. Helping was simply what they did. One human woman, a soldier with burns on her face, had grabbed a Valari doctor's hand. "I will never forget this," she had said. Never. Una wondered if that was true. She wondered if humans remembered kindness the way her people did. "Send a message," she said to Taro. "Send it to Earth." What should I say? Una thought for a long moment. She had written thousands of diplomatic messages in her life. She knew all the formal words, all the proper phrases. But none of that seemed to matter now. "Keep it simple," she finally said. "Tell them the truth." She dictated the message slowly. Taro typed each word with trembling fingers. "We are the Valari. We are dying. Our world is burning. We asked the galaxy for help, and no one came. We have no one left to ask. We do not know if you will listen. We do not know if you will care. But we are desperate, and you are our last hope. Please, if there is any kindness in your hearts, please help us." Taro looked up at her. "Ambassador, the humans have no treaty with us. They have no reason to come." Una smiled sadly. "I know, but sometimes people surprise you." She pressed the button to send the message. It flew out into the darkness of space, toward a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. Then Una sat down to wait. Outside, the Marek ships moved closer. The bombardment continued. Fire fell from the sky like rain, and somewhere in the vast emptiness between stars, a simple message traveled toward Earth, a plea from strangers, a cry for help. Una did not know if anyone would answer. She did not know if humans would care about a species they had barely met. But she had done everything she could. Now there was nothing left but hope. And hope for the Valari was running out. The message reached Earth at 3 in the morning, Luna Station time. A young communications officer named Lee Minho was the first to hear it. He played it twice, then 3 times. Then he ran to wake his commander. Within an hour, the message had reached the highest levels of the United Terran government. Within 2 hours, the Emergency Defense Council had gathered in the Great Hall of Luna Station, Admiral Park. Jisoo sat at the head of the long table. She was 53 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. She had commanded the Terran Defense Fleet for 8 years. In that time, she had fought pirates, stopped rebellions, and protected Earth from a dozen different threats. But she had never heard anything like this message. She played it again for the council. The room fell silent as the Valari ambassador's voice filled the air. The words were simple. The desperation was real. "Please help us." When the message ended, nobody spoke for a long moment. Finally, Commander Kang Do-yoon cleared his throat. He was the chief military advisor, a tall man with a serious face. "Admiral, I must speak honestly. This is not our fight." "Explain," Jisoo said. "The Valari are not our allies. We have no treaty with them. We have no obligation to help." Do-hyun pulled up a display showing the Marek fleet. "The Dominion has 47 warships in the Valari system. We have 17 ships available for deployment. They outnumber us nearly 3 to 1. What are our chances?" Asked Minister Bae Yoonji. She handled Earth's economy, and her face was pale with worry. Do-yoon hesitated. "If we engage the Marek directly, we could lose half our fleet. Maybe more. The cost would be enormous. Thousands of lives. Billions in resources. And that assumes we survive at all. So we do nothing?" Someone asked. "We protect ourselves," Do-yoon replied. "That is what a military is for. We defend our own people, not strangers on the other side of the galaxy." Several council members nodded. The logic was clear. The numbers made sense. Earth had no reason to risk everything for a species they barely knew. Admiral Jisoo listened without expression. She understood the argument. She had made similar arguments herself, long ago. War was not about emotion. It was about calculation. You counted your ships, counted the enemy ships, and made the smart choice. But something in that message stayed with her. Something in the ambassador's voice. "Does anyone else wish to speak?" she asked. The room was quiet. Then a chair scraped against the floor. Captain Yoon Hana stood up slowly. She was younger than most of the council, only 35. Her face carried scars from an old battle, burns that had never fully healed. She walked with a slight limp. "I would like to say something," she said. Jisoo nodded. "Go ahead, Captain." Hannah took a deep breath. 20 years ago, I was stationed at Kepler. There was an explosion in the reactor. My entire team was trapped. We were burning. We were dying. No human ship could reach us in time. She paused. Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped the edge of the table. A Valari medical ship was passing through the system. They were not supposed to stop. They had no reason to help us. But they did. They came on board and worked for 18 hours straight. They pulled us from the fire. They healed our wounds. They saved everyone. Hannah looked around the room. I asked their doctor why they helped us. Why they risked their lives for strangers. Do you know what she said? Nobody answered. She said, "Because you were hurting. Because you needed help. That is all the reason we need." Hannah's voice grew stronger. "The Valari saved my life. They asked for nothing in return. They did not calculate the cost. They did not check if we had a treaty. They simply helped, because that is who they are." She pointed at the display showing the Marek fleet. Now they are the ones who are hurting. Now they are the ones who need help. The whole galaxy has turned its back on them. Every powerful species has refused. And they are asking us. Minister Bay spoke up. "Captain, I understand your feelings. But we must think about our own people. Our own children. Is it right to risk their futures for strangers?" Hannah nodded slowly. "I understand that argument. I do. But let me ask you something. What kind of people do we want to be? What will we tell our children when they ask why we did nothing while an innocent species died?" She turned to Admiral Jisoo. "Admiral, I know the numbers are against us. I know it might be suicide. But some things matter more than numbers. Some things matter more than safety." "What are you saying, Captain?" Jisoo asked. Hannah stood straight. "I am saying that if we ignore this message, we will survive. But we will lose something more important. We will lose who we are. We will become like all the others, cold, calculating, safe." She shook her head. "The Valari asked for help. That should be enough. That should be all the reason we need." The room fell silent again. Jisoo looked at the faces around the table. Some were angry. Some were afraid. Some were thinking hard. "We will vote," Jisoo said. "All in favor of sending aid to the Valari, raise your hand." Hands went up. Hannah's first, then others. One by one, council members made their choice. Jisoo counted carefully. When she finished, she allowed herself a small smile. The vote passes. By one. Commander Doyen sighed heavily. "Admiral, for the record, I believe this is a mistake." Jisoo stood up. "Your objection is noted, Commander. Now get to your ship. We have work to do." She turned to the communications officer. "Send a message to every ship in the fleet. Tell them to prepare for immediate departure." "What should I say, Admiral?" Jisoo thought of the Valari ambassador's words. Simple, desperate, true. Tell them we have received a cry for help. Tell them we are going to answer it. The officer nodded and ran to carry out the order. Within hours, 17 warships began to move. Engines powered up. Weapon systems came online. Crews said goodbye to their families, not knowing if they would return. The Terran war fleet was mobilizing. Somewhere across the galaxy, the Valari were still waiting, still hoping, still believing that someone might come. They did not know it yet, but their message had been heard. And humanity was on its way. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began. 3 weeks of fire and death. 3 weeks of waiting for help that never came. Ambassador Una stood in the underground command center beneath the capital city. The walls shook with each new explosion. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered and dimmed around her. The last leaders of her people gathered. They were tired. They were scared. They had run out of hope. The Marak ground forces are preparing to land, reported a young officer. They will reach the surface within hours. Una nodded slowly. She had expected this. The bombardment was ending because there was nothing left to bomb. Now the Marak would come down to finish what they had started. She thought about the message she had sent to Earth. 12 days had passed. There had been no response. The humans had not answered. Perhaps they had never received it. Perhaps they simply did not care. "We should prepare the surrender documents," said one of her advisors. "No," Una replied firmly. "We will not surrender to murderers." "Then what?" "We have no weapons. We have no army. We cannot fight them." Una had no answer. She looked at the faces around her. These were her people, healers and teachers and artists. They had never hurt anyone. They had only ever tried to help and now they were going to die. On the Marak command ship, General Threk watched the planet below with satisfaction. He was a massive creature, covered in thick gray scales. His eyes glowed red in the darkness of the bridge. "The bombardment is complete," reported his second-in-command. "Excellent," Threk replied. "Begin landing operations. I want prisoners. We will make examples of them." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Valari had been easy prey. Their protectors had abandoned them, just as he knew they would. The elder races were cowards. They talked about honor and treaties, but when the time came to fight, they always found excuses. "Sir," said a sensor officer suddenly, "we are detecting something." Threk turned. "What is it?" "Multiple hyperspace signatures. Something is coming." Threk frowned. "The Concord forces?" "No, sir. The signatures are different. We have never seen this configuration before." Before Threk could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. Light burst across the darkness. And from that light came ships. 17 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. They were human vessels. Their hulls were dark and angular, covered in weapons. At the front flew the largest ship, a massive warship with the name painted on its side in bright letters, TDF, Indomitable. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Park Jisu stood with her hands behind her back. She studied the tactical display showing the Marak fleet. 47 ships, nearly 3 times her number. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said her executive officer. "Open a channel to the planet's surface." The communications officer worked quickly. "Channel open." Jisu took a breath. She thought about the Valari ambassador who had sent that desperate message. She thought about the millions of people below who were waiting to die. "This is Admiral Park Jisu of the Terran Defense Fleet. We received your message. We are here." "Hold on." In the underground command center, Una heard those words through the static of a damaged speaker. She did not understand at first. She thought she was dreaming. She thought her tired mind was playing tricks on her. "We received your message. We are here." Taro grabbed her arm. "Ambassador, ships. Human ships." Una ran to the display screen. Through the smoke and clouds, she could see them. Dark shapes against the purple sky. Ships, real ships. They had come. Tears rolled down her face. She could not speak. She could barely breathe. Someone had answered. On the Marak command ship, General Threx stared at the human fleet with disbelief. "Humans?" he said. "They send humans to fight us?" He laughed. It was a deep, ugly sound. He had studied humans. He knew about their short lives, their emotional nature, their primitive society. They were children playing at war. "They have 17 ships," his officer reported. "We have 47. "Then this will be quick," Threx said. "Open a channel to their flagship." A moment later, Admiral Jisu's face appeared on his screen. She was calm. Her eyes were steady. She did not look afraid. "Human Commander," Threx said, "you have made a mistake coming here. This is not your fight. Leave now, and I will let you go." Jisu's expression did not change. "General Threx, you have 1 hour to withdraw from this system. Take your ships and leave. Do not come back." Threx blinked. Then he laughed again. "You threaten me? With 17 ships? Do you know who I am? I have conquered 100 worlds. I have destroyed fleets twice your size." "Then you know what war looks like," Jisu replied. "You know the cost. I am giving you a chance to avoid that cost. Take it, or what?" Jisu leaned forward. Her voice was quiet but hard as steel. "Or we will show you what humans do to those who hurt innocent people." Threx's smile faded. There was something in this human's eyes. Something he had not expected. Not fear, not doubt. Something else, something dangerous. "You are fools," he said. "You will all die here." "Maybe," Jisu replied. "But so will you." She cut the channel. On the bridge of the Indomitable, her crew waited in tense silence. "Admiral?" her executive officer asked. "What are your orders?" Jisu turned to face her crew. She saw young faces and old faces. She saw fear and courage and determination. These people had left their families to come here. They had risked everything to help strangers die. She was proud of them. "All ships, battle stations," she said calmly. "Weapons hot. Shields to maximum. Today, we remind the galaxy what humanity stands for." Across the fleet, 17 crews prepared for the fight of their lives. General Threx gave his own order. "Destroy them." The Marak fleet moved forward. Weapons charged. Targeting systems locked. The first shot was fired, and the battle for Valari Prime began. The first Marak shot hit the Indomitable's forward shields. The ship shook but held. Admiral Jisu grabbed the railing of the command platform and stayed on her feet. "Return fire," she ordered. "All batteries." The human fleet came alive with light. Weapons blazed across the darkness of space. The Marak expected the humans to form lines, to fight in the orderly patterns that all civilized species used. They were wrong. The Terran ships, scattered like birds fleeing a storm. Small fighter squadrons burst from carrier bays, dozens of tiny craft moving too fast to track. Destroyers broke formation and dove between the larger Marak vessels, firing at close range. The humans were everywhere at once, attacking from every direction. General Threx watched in confusion. "What are they doing? This makes no sense." "They are not following standard combat doctrine," his tactical officer reported. "I can see that," Threx roared. "Adapt. Find their pattern." But there was no pattern. Human pilots made decisions in seconds, changing direction, choosing targets, working together without orders. They fought like chaos itself. The Marak ship Ravager exploded as 3 human destroyers focused fire on its engines. Another Marak vessel, the Crusher, took a torpedo strike to its bridge. It spun out of control and crashed into a friendly ship. On the Indomitable, Jisoo watched the battle unfold. The Marak were stronger, but they were slow. They expected their enemies to stand still and trade shots until one side fell. They did not know how to fight opponents who refused to stop moving. Forward section. Concentrate fire on the Marak carriers, she commanded. Fighter wings, disable their weapons platforms. Do not let them regroup. Admiral. Her sensor officer called out. Marak bombardment ships are breaking off. They are targeting the surface. Jisoo's blood went cold. The bombardment ships. In the chaos of battle, some Marak vessels were ignoring the human fleet. They were going to resume their attack on Valari Prime. Destroyer Jeonju. This is the Admiral. Intercept those bombardment ships. Do not let them reach the planet. Captain Yoon Hana's voice came back through the com. Understood, Admiral. We are moving now. The Jeonju turned hard and accelerated toward the planet. 2 other destroyers followed. They raced past Marak warships, taking hits but not slowing down. Hana stood on her bridge, watching the tactical display. 3 bombardment ships were ahead, charging their main weapons. Below them was the last major city on Valari Prime, a city filled with refugees. They are preparing to fire, her weapons officer reported. Time to intercept? We cannot reach them in time. They will fire before we are in range. Hana looked at the display. The math was simple. The bombardment ships would fire. The city would burn. Millions would die, unless something blocked the shot. All hands, Hana said quietly. This is the captain. I need everyone to brace for impact. Her crew looked at her with confusion. Then understanding. Then fear. Captain, her executive officer said. You cannot mean to. I am putting us between the bombardment ships and the city. We will take the hit. The ship will not survive. The city will. Hana's voice was steady. That is what matters. The Jeonju changed course. It flew directly into the path of the bombardment. Below, evacuation transports were lifting off from the city, carrying thousands of Valari to safety. The Marak weapons fired. 3 massive beams of energy lanced toward the planet. They hit the Jeonju instead. The destroyer's shields collapsed instantly. The hull tore apart. Explosions ripped through every deck. The ship began to break into pieces, but it held together just long enough. The bombardment dissipated against the dying vessel. The city below was safe. The transports escaped. In the wreckage, emergency pods ejected into space. Hana's crew floated in the debris, injured but alive. The other human destroyers moved in to rescue them. Hana herself was pulled from a shattered command pod by her executive officer. She was badly hurt, bleeding from a dozen wounds. But she was breathing. The city? She whispered. Safe, Captain. You saved them. Hana closed her eyes and smiled. On the Marak command ship, General Threk could not believe what he was seeing. A human captain had sacrificed her ship to protect strangers. Not even her own people. Strangers. This is madness, he said. Then his ship shook violently. Alarm screamed. Hull breach on deck 7. Someone shouted. Intruders! Human soldiers on board. Threk turned. What? Commander Kang Do-yoon had led a boarding party across the void between ships. They had cut through the hull and fought their way inside. Now they were moving through the corridors, heading for the bridge. The Marak Marines rushed to stop them. They outnumbered the humans 5-1. They were bigger, stronger, better armed. It did not matter. Do-yoon and his team fought like demons. They used every weapon they had, then used their fists, then used whatever they could find. When Do-yoon ran out of ammunition, he picked up a blade from a fallen Iraq warrior and kept fighting. They pushed forward, deck by deck. corridor by corridor, leaving a trail of Marak bodies behind them. General Freck sealed the bridge doors. He called for reinforcements. None came. The human fleet had destroyed his communications array. He was alone. The doors exploded inward. Do-Hyun walked through the smoke. His armor was damaged. His face was covered in blood, some his own, some not. He held the Marak blade in one hand. Threk drew his own weapon. You think you have won? Kill me and another will take my place. The Dominion will never stop. Do-Hyun moved forward. He was tired. He was wounded. He should have been dead 10 times over. But he kept moving. We did not come here to win, he said. We came here to help. He raised his blade. The battle lasted 9 hours. When it ended, 31 Marak ships had been destroyed or captured. The rest fled into hyperspace, leaving their general behind. 6 human ships were gone. 4 others were barely holding together. Over 2,000 human soldiers had died, but Valari Prime was safe. In the underground shelter. Ambassador Yuna listened to the reports in stunned silence. The humans had done the impossible. They had defeated an enemy 3 times their size. For her people. For strangers. She wept. She laughed. She fell to her knees and thanked gods she was not sure she believed in. Above her, the human fleet drifted in the wreckage of battle. Damaged ships helped damaged ships. Rescue pods were collected. The wounded were treated. Admiral Jisoo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at the planet below. Purple and blue and green. Still alive. Admiral, her communications officer said, the Valari ambassador is requesting contact. Put her through. Yuna's face appeared on the screen. Tears were still wet on her cheeks. Admiral Jisoo, she said, her voice breaking. I do not know what to say. I do not know how to thank you. Jisoo smiled gently. You asked for help. We answered. That is all. You lost so many. For us. For people you barely know. We know you now, Jisoo replied. And we do not abandon our friends. Yuna could not speak. She simply pressed her hand to the screen, a gesture of gratitude beyond words. Jisoo pressed her own hand against the image. The war was not over. There would be consequences for what humanity had done. The galaxy would respond. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today. The Valari were alive, and that was enough. The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was filled with representatives from 100 worlds. Ancient species who had traveled the stars for millions of years. Powers that had shaped the galaxy itself. They had gathered for an emergency session, the first in 3 centuries. The topic was humanity. Ambassador Kim Tae-young stood alone at the center of the hall. He was a calm man of 50 years, with gray temples and steady hands. He had been Earth's voice in the galaxy for 2 decades. He had faced difficult moments before. Nothing like this. The senior representative of the Arathi, a tall being wrapped in flowing robes, spoke first. The humans have violated galactic law. They entered sovereign space without permission. They attacked a recognized military force. They destabilized an entire region. His voice echoed through the hall. This aggression cannot go unpunished. The representatives murmured in agreement. The Marak Dominion has filed a formal complaint, continued the Arathi. They demand reparations. They demand the humans surrender the officers responsible for this attack. Tae-young listened without expression. He had expected this. The elder races had spent 100,000 years building their systems of law and order. They did not appreciate newcomers who ignored the rules. More speakers rose to condemn humanity. The Solvik called for economic sanctions. The Kethni suggested military restrictions. Others wanted Earth expelled from galactic society entirely. Through it all, Tae-young remained silent. He let them speak. He let them finish. When the hall finally grew quiet, he stepped forward. "May I respond?" The presiding elder, an ancient creature called the Arbiter, nodded. "You may." Taeyong did not raise his voice. He did not argue or plead. He simply pulled out a small device and pressed a button. Ambassador Yuna's voice filled the hall. "We are the Valari. We are dying. Our world is burning. We asked the galaxy for help and no one came." The representatives shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away. Others pretended to study their notes. Taeyong let the message play to the end. Then he played another recording. And another. 12 messages in total. 12 pleas for help sent to the 12 members of the Galactic Concord. Then he played the responses. "We regret that we cannot assist at this time. Our obligations do not extend to this situation. We have determined that intervention is not appropriate." 12 refusals. 12 excuses. 12 betrayals. When the last recording ended, the hall was silent. Taeyong put away his device and looked at the gathered representatives. "You call yourselves the guardians of galactic peace," he said quietly. "You built this hall to protect the innocent. You wrote treaties promising to defend the weak. But when the Valari called for help, you calculated the cost and found it too high." He paused. "We did not calculate. We simply answered." The Arathi representative stood. "You were not authorized. You had no right to intervene." "No right?" Taeyong's voice grew harder. "The Valari were being slaughtered. Children were dying in the streets. And you want to talk about authorization?" He stepped closer to the Arathi representative. "We asked permission from the only authority that mattered. The people who were suffering. They asked for help. We said yes. This is not how things are done." Another representative shouted. "There are procedures, protocols. And while you follow your procedures, millions die." Taeyong shook his head. "We are new to this galaxy. We do not understand all your rules. But we understand one thing clearly. When someone asks for help, you help them. That is not complicated. That is not difficult. That is simply being decent." He turned to face the full assembly. "You may condemn us. You may sanction us. You may try to punish us. Humanity has been alone before. We survived. We will survive again." His voice grew stronger. "But know this. Any species, anywhere in this galaxy, who sends a plea for help into the darkness will find that humans answer. Not because of treaties. Not because of profit. Not because someone authorized it. Because someone asked. Because they needed help. Because that is who we are." The hall was completely silent. Then something unexpected happened. Ambassador Yuna stood up from her seat in the visitors' gallery. She walked down the long stairs to the main floor. She crossed the empty space and stood beside Taeyong. "The Valari stand with humanity," she said simply. A moment passed. Then another representative stood. Then another. Species that had watched humanity with curiosity. Species that had been abandoned themselves. Species that remembered what it felt like to have no one come. Within minutes, 15 species had left their seats to stand with the human ambassador. The Arathi representative looked at the Arbiter. "This is outrageous. They cannot simply—" "It appears they can," the Arbiter said slowly. The ancient being studied the growing crowd around Taeyong. "It appears they already have." The vote on sanctions failed. The demands for punishment were withdrawn. In the end, the Galactic Concord could not agree on anything except that humanity was dangerous, but not dangerous in the way they had thought. Dangerous because humans cared about strangers. Dangerous because humans would fight for people they had never met. Dangerous because humans did not understand the careful, calculated cruelty that let civilized beings watch others die. Within a year, the Galactic Concord dissolved. It was replaced by a new alliance, one built on a simple promise. If a member called for help, the others would come. Not because of calculation, not because of profit, because that was what help meant. Humanity led the new alliance, not because they were the strongest, but because they had proven something the elder races had forgotten, that kindness was not weakness, that compassion was not foolishness, that helping strangers was the most civilized thing a species could do. On Valari Prime, they built a monument to the battle. It stood in the center of the rebuilt capital, a tower of white stone that caught the morning light. At its base was inscribed the message that Ambassador Yuna would never forget. We received your message. We are here. Hold on. Years later, a Valari historian visited Earth to write about what had happened. She sat with Admiral Jisoo, now retired, in a garden on Luna Station. I must ask, the historian said, why did you come? The galaxy gave you every reason to stay home. The odds were against you. The cost was enormous. Why did you risk everything for strangers? Jisoo thought for a long moment. She looked at the flowers around her, at the blue earth hanging in the sky above. There is an old human saying, she finally replied. When someone asks for help, you help them. That is it. That is the whole reason. The historian frowned. But that seems terribly inefficient. You could have calculated the benefits, measured the risks, made a rational decision. Jisoo smiled. Maybe, but that is not who we are. She stood and walked to the edge of the garden, looking up at the stars. The galaxy is very old, very wise, very careful. But somewhere along the way, they forgot something important. They forgot that helping others is not a burden. It is a gift. It is a gift. It is what makes life worth living. She turned back to the historian. We are young. We are foolish. We make mistakes. But we never forget that one simple truth. When someone needs help, you help them. Not because you have to. Not because you will get something in return. But because that is what good people do. The historian wrote down every word. She would share them across the galaxy. She would tell the story of the humans who came when no one else would. And she would end her book with the same words that had started it all. A title, simple plea for aid, and the fleet that answered.